Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today, we are talking about managing orders internally. This is a topic that I don't believe I've really covered, at least not in any great depth on the podcast yet. So I feel like it is time. I actually ran into a designer at the Interior Design Show in Toronto back in January, and she said, I've got a bunch of topics, ideas that I would love for you to record for the podcast. And this was one of them. So if you're listening and this is you, you know who you are. Um, and I would say that this is the tip of the iceberg. This is a big topic, and it's something that I don't want to overwhelm you with, but there are certain aspects that we need to talk about because in while I was planning or preparing this episode and sort of taking notes on what to talk about, what became glaringly obvious to me is that the bulk of the mistakes that I've made in my business, I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes, but a lot of the mistakes I've made have come from errors in the ordering process. I didn't realize the volume of mistakes, whether they were financial or they just made me look bad or what have you, came from the errors that we have made. And so I feel like this is definitely a worthy topic. So today I'm going to dive into the behind the scenes of managing orders, tracking procurement, and keeping everything organized when you are juggling vendors, clients, and potentially a growing team. So before we jump in, I'm going to share a story. Here we go. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. All right. A story from my early days in the industry. So early, in fact, it's before I even went out on my own and launched my own interior design firm. It's actually a story that when I sit down to think about what were some of the biggest mistakes that I've made in ordering, this is top of mind. It's still like the trauma of it is still there. And some of you maybe heard me share this story before, but there's a reason I'm going to share it again. It was so impactful. And I honestly think about this anytime that I've set up systems for a new project, anytime I am tweaking my process, I think about this. So here's the story. When I was working as a designer's assistant here in Toronto, one of my main responsibilities was handling orders. We had incredible clients and we did a lot of incredible custom furniture. It was a real learning curve for me when I was first starting out because coming out of design school, I worked for a home staging firm for a short time in Vancouver before I came to Toronto. And I started to work with a designer as his assistant. And it was a learning curve because I did not learn in school anything about really furniture. I'm not going to lie, fabrics, let alone ordering them and then custom. Like, talk about a steep, steep learning curve. And so, what did I do? I did my best to learn on the job, ask questions, and keep moving forward. But it was a fast pace. You guys know if you've run a design project, there can be a lot of demands on your time, and no one ever has enough time to get anything done. And I was juggling a lot. Like, I was juggling all of that, plus the invoicing, plus sourcing, plus pickups, plus project management. Like, I was doing a lot of things. And so sometimes I would cut corners. And this one particular story, it was a beautiful condo project in a very expensive neighborhood in Toronto. And we had this gorgeous custom sofa planned for the client's study or their den. We were doing a lot of furniture for that house, but this is this one particular sofa. And it was meant to anchor the entire space. It was a neutral gray, classic style. I don't even remember the style. I remember the fabric so well, though, and you'll find out why in a second. And I hadn't had that much experience with ordering fabrics. I had been doing it, but I was under a ton of pressure because we had multiple projects. And so even though I'd done it before, I was thinking, you know what? This project is not that big. I've done this a million times. And I was so eager to get the sofa into production because lead times were getting longer and longer and the client was moving in that what did I do? I made a classic rookie mistake. I skipped the first and most important step when it comes to custom furniture, which is bypassing placing a CFA for the fabric. For those who don't know what a CFA is, it is, oh my God. I think it's a cut for approval. It's not funny. Now I'm like remembering what things are called. You get so used to calling something. It is, they send you a cut of the fabric from the bolt that you're going to order, because chances are you need like 15, 20 yards or more. And so there's either a bolt or a couple of bolts, depending on how big that bolt of fabric would be. And they cut a piece of it off and they send it to you in the mail, the physical mail, so that you can confirm that fabric is the right dye lot for what you need. And when I say dye lot, I'm just breaking this down for those who are like, what is she talking about? Every run of fabric, even if it's the same code, might be slightly different because the dye mixture could slightly vary. And so the idea is, especially with something like a neutral or a solid, you're not always getting a fabric that matches that sample that you picked up in the showroom, which we refer to as memo samples in the industry. So I had the memo sample from Kravit, the sample, and what I had done is I cut a little square of that sample that we borrowed, air quotes, from the showroom, which we never returned, and I sent that in a purchase order to my supplier. So he's like, okay, so he knows when he receives the fabric, this is what it's going to feel like. This is it. This is the name of the fabric, but also like this is the color and the texture and everything. But instead of taking the first step, which takes 2 weeks, I will tell you, at least it did back then, and placing a cutting for approval, that's what it is, a cutting for approval. My God, I had a brain block there for a second. I typically place a cutting for approval. You usually wait 2 weeks till you get it in the mail because it's like snail mail, or maybe they express it, but still. And then once you receive that cut, you confirm, okay, yep, I'm happy with this. You can go ahead and then you proceed with the order. I skipped the CFA. And so what that means is I went straight to ordering. I said, that's fine. I'm sure the diet, like, come on, like, what can be off about it? It's a freaking medium gray sofa, right? Have you ever had that thought where you're like, okay, fine, maybe I'll wait. And like, I'm sure. And here's the thing, most of the time when I would place a CFA, the sample would come or the cutting would come and it was exactly the same as the memo sample. So in my mind, as the newbie, I'm like, well, this is silly. What a waste of time. We don't have 2 weeks to spare. I was getting pressure from my boss, pressure from everybody, pressure from the clients, the contractors, like, let's get everything ordered and done. And let's be honest, probably a lot of pressure for myself, just trying to check one more thing, one more box off the list. Just want to get the order done so I can move on to the next thing. And I was like, well, all the other times I've done this, the fabric's been exactly the same as a sample. Like, what are the chances that there'll be a variance? Well, joke's on me. So I ordered the fabric, but what happens? So that was my first red flag. I shouldn't have done that. I should have followed the regular process. Second mistake I made, because you can't just make one mistake, right? When I got a phone call from my supplier, and he picked up the phone and he said, hey, Rebecca, I just want to let you know I received the fabric that you ordered for the sofa, and it's not exactly the same color as the sample you sent me. And I will never forget this conversation. Gerard, love him. He's retired now. Oh, I wish he hadn't retired. But anyhow, he's amazing. And I remember thinking or saying out loud, oh, Gerard, is it gray? And I was like, well, yeah, it's gray, but like it's a slightly different tone. Like it's a little bit purpley, pinky. And I said, if it's gray, it's fine. Gray is gray. Like, just fine. Just make the sofa. He's like, okay, I just wanted to confirm because, it's my job to let you know if it doesn't match. Now, good thing I had sent him that memo, right? Because otherwise, if he didn't know what he was matching it to, he would have just done it. But it doesn't matter anyways, because I ignored him because I was so anxious to keep moving. So he had my back and I brushed it off. I am going to be fine. The sofa's going to be fine. Fast forward 3 months to delivery day. The sofa arrives, and guess what? It wasn't exactly the gray we expected. It had a very distinct purple undertone that completely clashed with everything else. With the carpet that we'd brought in, the Turkish rug we brought in from Elty, with the sofa custom pillows that we had made, with the drapery, like literally everything was off. I looked at my boss, he looked at me, and we were horrified. What can we do? We had the carpet company bring a bunch of other carpets that we could see. We flipped out the pillows. We did everything we could because otherwise we would have had to eat / he would have, and I may have lost my job, a $10,000 brand new custom sofa. Not to mention any ripple effect if we'd have to replace other things. And not to mention that we would have added 3 months to this timeline. It would have destroyed the project. We got lucky. We made it work. But the heart palpitations that I can still feel from that day have never left. We dodged a bullet, but only by the skin of our teeth. And it required a ton of last minute scrambling. And you know what? That is just one example. Over the last decade, I can tell you that most of the biggest, costliest mistakes in my business have come from issues in the ordering process. Hardware arriving the wrong finish because we didn't verify. Lighting that is way too small for the space because I didn't look at the dimensions in the CAD plan. Duplicate chandeliers showing up when we only needed one because someone missed the fine print. The list literally goes on. And the common thread in almost all of these mistakes is that the cross checks didn't happen. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter if you're using old school Excel spreadsheets or the fanciest procurement software on the market. If you don't have the right systems for verification, mistakes are going to happen. So today I'm going to share what I've learned the hard way about managing orders internally and the tools that can help when it makes sense to outsource and maybe when it makes sense to do it in-house, to do it yourself. And most importantly, how to create those critical cross-check systems that prevent expensive mistakes. So let's start with software because that is probably one of the biggest questions I get is what software do you use to track orders? The software that I have used for over a decade is Design Docs. However, they have been purchased by Studio Designer, and I understand that they are folding it into Studio Designer. So I'm not telling you to run out and get Design Docs, but there are lots of programs like that, like Programma, like Design Files, like Mydoma, like Studio Designer. There is a laundry list of programs. But when we start with tools, I want to make sure you understand you don't need the fancy software and systems. You can track orders using spreadsheets, and many designers do. But what I found is it did get a little messy if you don't stay on top of the input and stay on top of who's doing what. Here's what you need in a system. So as you go out into the world and you're looking for the best system for you, some of you are already aware of this and some of you are just starting out. So here are some of the things that I recommend a software or program include. And if it's not a program, you need to be doing with your QuickBooks and spreadsheets. Purchase orders, POs. You need to have a system that can generate purchase orders. You cannot skip this. Vendor tracking, right? So you can track where orders are at what time. We call this order tracking, but it's basically your vendor tracking. And one that can have a library of your vendors, so you don't have to re-enter the information every time. Shipping and delivery status. So something where you can go in and you can toggle something to find out the status of where is something at once you've placed an order. That is a big one. I get a lot of designers asking like, oh my gosh, how do I track all this? How do I know where everything is? I used to have this robust spreadsheet, but like if I wasn't updating it, I didn't trust it. That's why I do like a program, honestly. And I did love design docs for this. Um, Project-based budgets. Some programs now will allow you to build out the budget. And I can tell you, once we started doing that, oh, we could see the variance very quickly. It was really wonderful. We could also start to see where we were constantly under budgeting for things or maybe over budgeting, though that's pretty rare. And then invoicing, I think that goes without saying, a system that can create invoices for you and one that can track your margin or your markup, because you want to make sure that the program you're using is going to show you what your cost is versus the retail or what you're charging your client. And a platform, and there's no ad for this. I do not have an affiliate for this program. But of course I'm open if they want to reach out to me. But one platform that's getting a lot of popularity among design studios right now is called Programma. It's visual, it's modern, and it's specifically built for interior designers, which means it understands our workflow. And what I love about it is that it does integrate the design process with procurement. So everything's in one place. You want to go check that out. But there are other great options depending on those specific needs. As you know, Design Docs was the one that I used for over a decade. I still have it, but I am now having to download all of my data from a decade because I haven't been downloading all the invoices every year. And this is just a sidebar for those of you who are thinking, okay, I'm just going to get a program and everything will live in there. What happens the day that that program no longer exists? You need 7 years of back data for the CRA, the whatever it's called in the US, is it the IRS, or whoever it is that you're filing your taxes to. Now I have to go in and pull that out of the program because I won't have that program in 3 years from now. It won't exist, and I'm not going to be able to go in and pull that data. So that's something to consider to get in a cadence. And that's not, I didn't have this as a part of the podcast. I wasn't going to share this, but it just got me thinking. You want to make sure on a monthly basis, like you are also downloading and saving to a Google Drive, a hard drive, a printed copy of invoices, vendor invoices, but also the ones you send to clients. Okay. Their studio designer, as I mentioned before, it's been around probably the longest. I would say it's probably the most comprehensive. So it can be overwhelming for someone just starting out. And you can also look into Ivy. Again, there is a long list of lots of programs. You want to test them out a little bit, find what works for you, and then move on. The biggest mistake that I made in the early years was constantly thinking the grass was greener. So I had design docs, but then I would get frustrated with it. So then I would like, okay, well, let's try this other one. And I would sign up for a free thing and I would start a project in there. And then I'd realize, oh, shoot, that doesn't have this thing. Okay, let's go back to design docs. Oh, what about studio designer? And I would get on the phone and I would be talking to designers about do you like Ivy? It's been purchased by House. What does that mean? Like it was so time consuming mentally that I recommend just get a program that works and just sometimes it's better the devil you know and just go. But I would also say invest in a system or a program before you absolutely need it. Because by the time you're drowning in orders, you are not going to have the time or the capacity to implement a new software. I literally started my business, and with my very first project, I used Design Docs. Was it expensive for me? Heck yes. Was it worth it? 1,000%. Organizing your orders and placing those orders in an organized fashion so that you can grow and scale. And I do believe part of my ability to scale so quickly in under 5 years, like in under 5 years, we were doing like 7 figures in revenue, but I could only manage all that volume because we already were using a program. Okay. I want to talk about outsourcing. So outsourcing is another area that I get where designers are always asking, like, maybe can I just outsource this? I don't want to do this. This is so annoying. I hate admin. I hate data entry. I hate tracking orders. Like, ugh, it's like a suck of my brain power. I can relate. So my answer to your question is yes. If you're scaling and you're finding yourself spending too much time in the weeds of order management, you can outsource. The benefits are super clear, right? It's going to free up your time to focus on what you're best at: design, working with your clients, building those relationships. Also, it's going to keep you organized. It is going to bring consistency to tracking all of the products that you are reselling and communication with your vendors and clients. It also helps keep vendors accountable, right? So when you have a dedicated person following up, it's actually so much better than doing it yourself. There is something about having you as like, it's like you're behind the barracks in a way, right? Like that person who you've outsourced it to, whether it's a third party company or an administrative assistant, they are the buffer between you and your client and between you and your vendor. And oftentimes, what I find is you will get paid faster and your vendors will respond quicker. I don't know why, it just is. So, okay, who might you hire? So, there are a few options, as I just mentioned. So, you could technically hire someone who that is their specialty, like a freelance procurement specialist who works with multiple design firms. I have a designer friend who did that for years. She had somebody who managed her QuickBooks and her design docs and placed all of her orders, and she did it for a few other designers, and that was her specialty, and she did a great job until she retired, and then she was no more. You could, if it's not a specialist who only does that, you could find a virtual assistant, someone who has training in interior design project management. They don't have to be a designer. This is not a role for a designer. I'm going to take a pause for a second. When I was first starting out, I tried to get my junior designers to do the ordering, like for like a few years. It was like year 3 when I realized this isn't working. A designer like myself is not trained and skilled at managing these Excel spreadsheets, at the order tracking, at the follow up, at being so diligently organized. Like they want to be creative. And so what I found was that was when the most of the mistakes were happening in my business because I didn't have the right people in the right seats. It wasn't until I brought on like an operations manager, administrative assistant, who that was their specialty, did ease and flow come to my business. So you could bring in a virtual assistant, someone who could do it remotely, or you could bring someone in time, in person, full or part time. They don't have to be full time. I can tell you, none of your first hires really need to be full time. A studio coordinator, or you could call them an operations manager. Really, it's just an administrative assistant, or I mean, there's all kinds of fancy titles. You can call the person whatever you want. It could be ordering specialist, procurement, whatever. Ideally, you want to find someone who is not a designer, but maybe like likes the design space, is open to learning, obviously, and who is super organized, ideally someone who has been in the industry ordering before or in an industry ordering, managing vendors. Like that is the skill set you need. You need someone who's going to follow up, who's going to pick up that frickin' telephone. Right? And you need someone who's going to stay on top of whether it's your Excel spreadsheet or your program. So when I made this transition, I would say about like 7 years ago, it was transformative. Instead of spending like 15 to 20 hours a week on procurement tasks myself or overseeing a junior designer do it with me, I mean, I moved to spending maybe 2 hours a week in just oversight meetings, having an order tracking meeting once a week. That is 15 plus hours that I was able to then dedicate to other things like this podcast, like the design work, like the client meetings, right? Or the business development. So, and this is I'm going to share a but, and this is a big but. You can't just hand over chaos and expect organization in return. You still need to have systems in place before you outsource. I mean, this is what I learned. I just thought someone was going to swoop in here with a superwoman cape or Superman cape and just be like, I got this, Rebecca. Now, those people exist, but I didn't have them. I couldn't find them. Your procurement person, your ordering person should be implementing and improving your system, right? Not creating one from scratch, ideally, while also trying to manage the orders. However, if you don't have process in your business and you don't have an ordering system, they can help you develop it. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And you want to make sure that nothing gets missed when they're actually placing the orders. And always maintain visibility with this hire. So you have regular check-ins. Like in my studio, we have weekly order tracking meetings where the lead designer and the admin would meet. Initially, it was with me for a long time, and then I was able to remove myself from these meetings. But we would meet either on Zoom or in person and review one project at a time. What is the status of everything that's been ordered? Ideally, the administrator would prep all of that so all the statuses were up to date ahead of that meeting. So all it was the designer answering questions like, yes, it's this finish. No, we can't delay that. What if it's back ordered? Okay, I'll reselect, all of those things. Wait, I noticed you haven't ordered the lighting yet. What's going on with that? Like, where are we at with this? Blah, 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 blah. And that way you can discuss any issues and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. I highly recommend a weekly order tracking status meeting. It will be a game changer. And at the beginning, even if it's just you, like I know some of you listening do not have a team, are not ready to hire. So it could just be you, but get that in your calendar. Get that as a repeat event where, like, let's say every Thursday morning, you're going to sit down and you're going to go through all the orders and check in on anything, do any follow-ups you need, and update your tracking sheet, whether it's a spreadsheet or you're using it inside a software. Whew. Okay, this is a good one, guys. Oh, I realized how much more information there is. And we're gonna just focus on these key areas and we'll come back for more. Don't worry. I'm also feeling like I need like a bonus in Power of Process as it pertains to this. I don't really go into the detail of it. I feel like it could be useful. Anyhow, that's a sidebar. Okay. Let's talk about accuracy, especially when there's multiple people involved. You heard me mention earlier that a lot of the mistakes that I made were from missing those cross checks and not having that accuracy. That is what I spent a lot of time on behind the scenes bettering is our practices for ordering. Who does what, and then who does the other, and then what, and then who sends it to what, and building out our robust step-by-step system so that we can avoid all these mistakes. This is truly where the rubber meets the road. How do you make sure mistakes don't happen when multiple people are involved in the ordering process? So first, you need a shared system that everyone uses constantly. So it could be a master tracker that's linked to each project. It could be in Excel, right? It could be in a program. You need unique purchase order numbers for every single order. Yes. You need to create a purchase order. If you don't know what that is, send me a DM. I'm going to figure out how to teach everyone about the basics of this stuff because I didn't know this shit when I started. I was like, a PO what? I'm sorry, what is QuickBooks? Like, I literally knew nothing, guys. I literally knew nothing. I mean, I went to school for political science and English cultural studies. I went and taught Spanish in Spain. I was an actress. Then I went to school for interior design. They did not teach any of this, by the way, none of the ordering. And then I was thrown into, okay, can you call and place the order for all this stuff? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, who do I call? I have to do it on the phone. Do I have to, where's the login? Like, oh my God, like talk about steep learning curve. When I think back to that time when I first started working as a designer's assistant, like, holy heck, no wonder I was stressed all the time. Yikes. Okay, back to POs. You need to use a purchase order for every order you place, even if your vendor does not ask for one. And this can get tricky because you want to move fast. And let's say you're ordering furniture from an online source where you don't need to send them a physical purchase order. And you just go online, right? Enter the credit card details. Boom, I ordered it from Amazon. Boom, Wayfair. Boom, Crate and Barrel. Boom, I don't know, McGee & Co. Like whoever you're ordering from. Boom, boom, boom. Quick and easy. Great. The purchase order is your first step to checking for any errors or mistakes. That is like your holy grail. Once you finalize what you're going to order, you need to create a purchase order so that the person, especially if there's somebody else helping you, references that before they order it. And what we do in our firm is the purchase order is created by the admin, and then the senior designer or the project lead or myself has to go through it for accuracy before an order is placed. What does this do? It does slow down your ordering process, but it's going to result in more accuracy. Okay. Another way to make sure mistakes don't happen is in this shared system that you're going to establish, you need clear status updates. So what are your tags or your drop-down options that you will have? It could be something as simple as ordered, shipped, received. You could throw in damaged. It's a good one. Returned. I mean, the list goes on. For us, it would often be ordered, and we'd put the date that it was ordered, shipped, and a date if we have one. Received, and then we had one which was I don't remember what it was, the short form was, but essentially it was like at Mittman, like held at Mittman. Mittman's our receiver. So we know that it's been received, but only at the receiver. It's not at the client's house. So then we would have another tag, which was like on site. And we would say the date that arrived on site. And even I think, I don't know if we did this, but it would be a good idea to say who received it or who inspected it on site. Because you know how these things go, especially with long projects. Okay, so then you need to define your roles. So you need a shared system, you need a shared process. What do we do? Definitely do purchase orders. Then you need to define the roles. So in my studio, we have explicit documentation of who places the orders, who confirms with the vendors, who reviews the purchase orders for accuracy, who updates the tracker, who receives and inspects deliveries, and what is the process for that. Fun little tip is we have little stickers, and then we put the sticker on the box and the person signs it and dates it, who inspects it. You could get a stamp too and like do fun things like that. I like fun stuff like that. I love the organization. So one practice that's been game changing for me is implementing that weekly order status check-in. So every Thursday, the admin will present, as I mentioned, to the project lead, the order status, like the update. So they've spent the entire week making sure everything is up to date, ideally in a perfect world, and then they would review it together. I think it's important to review it together versus sending it to someone, because then you can address any questions that come up. And that's really important. I think that doing it on Zoom works too. You could do it on Zoom or in person. But most importantly, you need to document everything. So every client approved selection, every change, if there's a change order, every conversation with a vendor, keep a written copy, a digital copy of all the invoices, the receipts, organized by project. And this is what I said I didn't do very well. And now I'm having to pull things out of my program. Keep things organized. And I cannot stress this enough. The time that you spend on documentation is going to save you tenfold in preventing mistakes and resolving issues when they do arise. Okay. The very last tip I'm going to share here, because I know I'm covering a lot of ground today. I'm realizing as I'm sharing this, I'm like, it's one thing to type it all up and have it in my Google Doc, and I've got my bullet points. Here's what I want to talk about. But then once I start talking it through, I'm like, oh shit, this is a big area. Like, I'm so glad that I'm finally starting to talk about this on the podcast. If you guys are liking this, by the way, can you let me know? Because there's so much more gold where this came from, because I spent a lot of hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours over the last 9 years, probably, really leaning into bettering these processes. Okay, bookkeeper, accountant. Should your bookkeeper reconcile all the purchases on the company credit card? And first of all, I did an episode a while back, I don't know where it is, of the things you need to start a design business. One of them is get yourself a business bank account and a business credit card. Don't do it through your personal. Keep it separate. It's going to make everything so much easier. But the short answer is yes, you need a bookkeeper to be reconciling, which is like matching the transactions that you're doing, the purchases you're making, with your bank statement or your credit card statement. Your bookkeeper, and if you don't have one yet, this is what you can do. I'm just going to walk you through. It's literally, I think it's like 4, let me double check. It's just 4 bullet points that you need to do on a monthly basis. I prefer if you have a bookkeeper doing this, but if you don't have one yet and you can do it yourself, because maybe you're just starting out and you just have a small project, then absolutely you can do this yourself. You need to review each charge on your statement. You need to match it to the order. You need to categorize it correctly, right? So let me just give you an example. So you're reviewing the charge. So let's say the charge is universal lighting on my credit card, charge me $3,500. I need to match that $3,500 to the purchases I made. okay, that was purchase order 4, purchase order 7, and purchase order 8, or purchase order 1, or whatever. It's for these 5 lights. Yep, that's the correct amount. That's for project Withrow. And I'm going to categorize it as a cost of goods. It's not an expense. It's not like paper for the printer. But if you're going through your statement and you see office supplies, that's the category, right? So categorizing things, and then ensure that it's assigned to the right project. So if you are going to be billing, you want to make sure that everything is going through the right project. A bookkeeper can do this for you. So I don't want you to like get too stressed out about doing all of this. This does more than just protect your business financially. It's going to keep you tax ready as well. So that is the goal, so that you're not blindsided come tax time. It's going to help you understand your actual profit margins as well. I'll tell you a quick story. So a few years ago, we had a project we were consistently running tight on margin. When we did a deep dive into the finances, we discovered that nearly $8,000 in small purchases hadn't been properly billed back to the client because they weren't properly tracked and reconciled. That was profit we were leaving on the table. When you have an accountant or a bookkeeper who understands the design industry, it's a huge advantage. They're going to understand things like vendor deposits, client retainers, how to properly account for the markup. And then one last tip is to keep, I said this before, I'm going to say it again, keep separate business card exclusively for purchases, right? Never mix it with your personal expenses. If you're just starting out and you're doing it, it's okay. I did it too. But once I finally got myself a business credit card, and I can tell you it was like very low limit. It was a bit of a joke, but it was something, right? And then eventually they'll increase your limit. It's going to make reconciling so much easier income tax time. Everything's going to be a lot easier too. All right. Woo, that was a doozy, guys. I want you to audit your current order tracking system. Do you have one? Is it scalable or is it chaotic? And be honest with yourself. And then if you want, test drive a tool like Procurement or Studio Designer. Before you commit to like fully using it, maybe test drive it with a single small project. See how you like it. And then as you start to develop a process for ordering, document it. Step by step, document it. That is how you are going to be able to scale, and more than scale, really, because I know not everybody here wants to scale. You're going to clear up mental bandwidth instead of always stressing. Like I used to wake up in the middle of the night. Did we order that? I don't know. Whatever. The rug? Shoot, I know what it's going to be like. It's coming from India and it's like 6 months. Oh, like the moments like that you have are going to disappear. Remember, you cannot grow your business if you're constantly putting out fires, panicking, dealing with missing orders or wrong items or budget oversight. Systems don't have to be complicated. You don't have to make it complicated, but you need something and it needs to be consistent. So whether you're working alone or you're starting to scale a team, having clear order tracking is going to protect your profit and your peace of mind. So start small, refine often, and don't be afraid to bring in help when you need it. Even when you're a little bit worried that maybe I can't afford it, just try it. Do a 3-month trial with someone. Bring them in. See if they can help you. It really is a game changer because the right systems and people will pay for themselves many times over once it gets chugging along and it's a well-oiled machine. And before we sign off, I wanted to invite you to my free workshop. So I'm hosting a free workshop, 3 mistakes standing between you and the design business of your dreams. And the workshop shares that you need these systems, right? You need to fine-tune business practices so that you can book clients who value your expertise, give you creative freedom. In the workshop, I'm going to pull back the curtain, just like I do in this podcast, to reveal the exact process that I used or I followed to go from being totally underpaid, stressed, and chaotic to booking better projects where I was compensated properly for my time and feeling a lot more well-rested. I'm going to show you the mistakes that could be blocking you from booking those dream clients, the exact proposal process, the step-by-step, that you can use to stand out as a professional, to eliminate the doubt and make those clients super eager to invest in you, and how you can land better projects by positioning your value the right way so that you can start using the ordering practices that I talked about today, because you're going to be ordering a lot of things, making a lot of money because you're bringing in the right projects. So this is really a workshop for designers who are just getting started, or maybe you're a few years in and you're just tired of client requests blowing up your phone, right? Sleepless nights, feeling disorganized, um, and feeling like maybe you're caught in that loop of clients that aren't truly valuing your expertise. And I'm going to change that. So head on over to RebeccaHay.com/workshop to register. There are 3 dates to choose from. Just pick the date that works best for you. They're happening now, so go check it out. And I really do want to get you feeling empowered with those practical fixes that you can implement right away. That's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Truthfully, it does help other designers find us. And then, of course, if this was useful, this particular episode, please share it with a friend. I'm sure there is a designer out there who is struggling with ordering, doesn't know where to start, feels frustrated. Maybe they're making mistakes and they're like, there has to be a better way. Send them this episode with love from you. And I will see you soon.